Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Did you know that there's a full 3D open world driver game for the Game Boy Advance? Or that you can play a version of Assassin's Creed with the same parkour and open world on the PSP? Handheld consoles have always had their limitations, but that hasn't stopped some incredibly ambitious developers from trying to port huge console games onto them. Today, we're taking a look at some of the most surprising and, frankly, impossible ports that you probably never knew existed. We'll see how developers managed to shrink these games down to fit systems that seem far too weak to run them. Let's get started. The first game I want to discuss is Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition for PSP, which was released on June 27 of 2005. Midnight Club 3 is a perfect example of what the PSP can do, since it's basically the same game as the PlayStation 2 version. The team behind this game couldn't be any different. Rockstar Leeds was in charge of porting this game to the system, the same team that created GTA Vice City Stories and Liberty City Stories. It was clear that they would be able to push the system to its limits. The game itself is basically the same as the PS2 version, only with downgrades in the visuals, like the city textures and cars, which are quite noticeable. Another issue with this version is the frame rate, which drops noticeably during gameplay. All of this, of course, is caused by the PSP's inferior performance compared to the PS2. Rockstar did not neglect the need to adapt the game to the profile of portable video games, which are more accustomed to playing the game in short intervals and in a more casual way. So it added 2 new modes, Quick Race and Arcade. There's also a multiplayer mode that's exclusive to this version, with up to 6 competitors via Wi-Fi. Otherwise, the game has its usual career mode set in 3 cities: San Diego, Detroit, and Atlanta. All of this while maintaining its open world aspect. On November 13 of 2007, the first game in the Assassin's Creed franchise was released. Assassin's Creed is famous for its story involving historical events, beautiful open world, and of course, the parkour. For its time, it was a very ambitious game that offered a freedom of exploration never seen before. Now, imagine this game running on a PSP. In a very ambitious move, Ubisoft Montreal released Assassin's Creed Bloodlines on November 17 of 2009. It is not exactly a port of the first Assassin's Creed, but rather a spin-off in the series. The story takes place after the first game. So why is it on this list? Believe it or not, it works very similarly to the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions. It retains all aspects of the original, from the open world to the well-known parkour. The cuts that had to be made were clearly in the graphics and size of the open world, which is much smaller compared to the PS3 and Xbox 360 versions. The gameplay is similar, although the control scheme was modified. Some features from the previous game were removed, such as eagle vision and horse riding. Other negative aspects of this version is the absence of a second analog stick to control the camera, which makes the gameplay slightly more limited and confusing. Story missions and assassinations have been redesigned from the original game. As a replacement, missions are played with the same structure as in Assassin's Creed 2. Now, Altair completes one task after another, slowly gathering information from allies and enemies as he clears each mission. Anyways, it's definitely worth checking out if you like the other games in the series. The Nintendo DS was a hugely popular video game console and remains the second best-selling of all time. It was therefore obvious that many companies would try to release games for this console, despite the difference in graphics compared to other consoles of the time, such as the PS3 and Xbox 360. Developers therefore tried to push the hardware to its limits. One example of this is the game Call of Duty Modern Warfare, which was released by N-Space and is based on the home console version of the game. While the game is set in the same environment as Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, it features a different storyline and gameplay mechanics adapted for the DS. One of the most challenging aspects of adapting an FPS game for this console is the lack of an analog stick. In this game, the touchscreen is used to move the camera, which makes the gameplay somewhat confusing. Overall, however, the gunplay itself is fine. Thankfully, the hitboxes are quite generous, as it can be difficult to aim. The game also features multiplayer, but unfortunately, it only supports local play, not online matches. So, to play the available game modes, you either need to play with friends who have their own copies of the game, or use a DS feature called Download Play. Even so, it features many gameplay elements typical of the series, including sights, vehicle missions, and of course campaign mode. The graphics were good for a DS game, but nothing exceptional. It's a port that hardly anyone imagined would happen, which is why it's so interesting. The Driver series was very successful during the PS1 era with the first two games, Driver and Driver 2. At that time, I didn't have a PS2, so I played Driver 1, pretending it was GTA San Andreas, due to the game's freedom. Because the game was so successful during the PS1 era, it was obvious that there would be a sequel for the newest consoles at the time. In 2004, Driver 3 was released for the Xbox, PlayStation 2, and PC, but what people didn't expect was that there would also be a version for the Game Boy Advance. People often compared this console to the Super Nintendo in terms of graphics at the time. Released on October 25 of 2005, it did quite well in the GBA. Reflections Interactive managed to create a port on par with PS2 games. Believe it or not, it kept the original aspects of the game, such as a fully 3D universe and an open world to explore. And that's interesting because even the GBA GTA is all in 2D, which is a very reminiscent of the GTAs from the PS1 era. The game works just like the PS2 version, with several missions in an open world where you can steal cars, complete side missions, and of course cause chaos by shooting everyone in the GTA style. So, how did they manage to run all this on a GBA? The solution was to bring in a 3D modeled environment with textures and cars as sprites. This brought a very interesting three-dimensional effect to a more limited console. Even the story remained intact. They had to cut some cutscenes and make a few other changes to suit the GBA's processing power, but none that altered the narrative. Need for Speed Underground is a classic PS2 game that everyone had at the time. It was a milestone in the history of racing games. Electronic Arts released this Need for Speed on various home consoles such as PS2, Xbox, and GameCube. But they made a Game Boy Advance too. Released in 2004, this was the only handheld version of the game. Well, not exactly the only one, but this is a subject for another video. The graphics were obviously affected, making it look a lot like a PS1 game, but the essence of underground culture on which the game is based was maintained. Nighttime street racing with tuned cars. There were a total of 14 different licensed vehicles in the game. Even the customization system was kept in the game, so all these cars could be upgraded with performance and visual enhancements such as bumpers, decals, rims, vinyls, and paint. The soundtrack has been kept in this game too, which is impressive. I don't know how they managed it, but the game features full songs of good enough quality that the lyrics are still understandable. Unfortunately, the game falls short in terms of sense of speed due to its frame rate often dropping to as low as 15 FPS, very different from the console versions, which sense of speed was one of the strengths. All the game modes were kept from the console version, including a career mode featuring circuit, sprint, drag race, and drift modes. In short, this is the closest we've come to having Need for Speed Underground on the PS1, so it's well worth experiencing. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want a part 2, let me know in the comments because I know there are several other examples we can talk about. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.